Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of This Week in History. This week we're going to look at June 4th to June 10th, and there's a few things going on. We're going to start getting into June pay-per-views, as you can tell, with things like King of the Ring, and of course we got some Slammiversaries that'll be happening all this month. But yeah, we got this week's edition. I want to thank you for joining us Thursday afternoon at 12 noon, your lunchtime indulgence into the history of our great sport, which is professional wrestling. And I want to thank our friends over at Coolbet for being part of our shows. I remind everybody to stay cool and bet responsibly. They sponsor all our shows that we do, including the Fantasy Warfare Tournament, This Week in History, and the Scumbags Wrestling Podcast. But of course, they definitely sponsor our Scumbags Prediction League, which happens every pay-per-view for WWE, NXT, AEW, and Impact Wrestling. We have Impact Wrestling coming up later on this month, I believe, for Slammiversary. Or no, that's July. But this weekend is NXT TakeOver in your house. So tune in and find out how you can be a part of it and win that championship belt. We also have Hell in a Cell coming up in a week and a half. So there's a couple opportunities to earn points and get that belt. Thank you for joining us on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, anytime we're available on your favorite podcasting outlets such as Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and anywhere else you get your podcasts from. We're part of the Ontario Independent Podcasting Network here in Ontario and the Johners Podcasting Network in the UK. So now that I've got all that stuff and fun out of the way, I'm going to bring in Jonesy, who brings us the compilation of all our material for each show. How are things in Niagara, Jonesy?
Well, at least the rehearsed material. We have a script, and then we just banter. How's it up here? It's actually pretty good. It's humid, but it's not as humid as it is in southwestern Ontario. Or sorry, in London. So it's a little cooler down here, especially if you go right down to the falls. The temperature difference is quite significant some days. And it's really lovely. The other day it was pretty hot out, and there was just enough mist going by where I was sitting. It was gorgeous.
Very nice. Yeah, speaking of London, unfortunately, we are dealing with some tough times. As recently, a lovely gentleman, which is too good of words for him, unfortunately plowed down a family just the other day. And so our city is definitely in mourning. And I want to send out thoughts and prayers to everybody connected to that family that was lost just the other day. Tragic, and hopefully we can move on as a community. But we are talking about professional wrestling right now and the history of it. So if you're ready to go, so am I.
All right, we're going to start with June 4th. 38 years ago in Philly, Andre the Giant defeated Big John Studd. On this day, as a legend has it, Andre the Giant fell asleep during the match with Big John Studd during an 8.5-minute headlock. The time of the match was 18 minutes, was actually a long match at that time for those two. So he actually fell asleep.
Yeah, wouldn't actually surprise me in the least about that. Whether he fell asleep legitimately or not, but he probably would have played that on Studd because he hated Big John Studd, and I don't know if it was a professional rivalry or the fact that, you know, he wanted to be the only giant, and you had Studd trying to be another giant, even though he wasn't going to be up to the same standard.
Studd was a giant, but he wasn't a true giant where Andre was.
Yeah, not to the same standards. And I actually the other day kind of compared Braun Strowman, who just got released by WWE, to being a modern day Big John Studd. And who I mentioned it to, Alex, he ended up saying that actually Braun Strowman is a more talented person than Big John Studd. So yeah, just unfortunately, both guys are gone, and Andre, as I said, did not really like him too much.
And no offense to Big John Studd, but I actually thought his action figure was more exciting than the guy on TV, because his tights were awesome, the look was great, but a bit of a snore. But anywho, that's okay. We still love Big John Studd somewhat. 35 years ago in Argyle, Texas, Carrie Atkinson, a.k.a. Carrie Von Erich, is injured in a motorcycle accident. Carrie would suffer a dislocated hip and a severely damaged right foot, which eventually led to having his foot amputated and fitted with a prosthetic foot, of course. You wouldn't have known watching the Texas tornado that he was actually a minus a foot, and I believe actually Shawn was the first one that brought that up to me and let me know that he actually didn't have a foot. And you watch him and it's like you can kind of see it, but it is hard to tell.
Yeah, I was surprised myself, but then, like you said, when you start watching it, even him coming to the ring at SummerSlam to go against Mr. Perfect and all that, kind of had a little bit of a limp there, but yeah, you would.
Hey, that could have just been from the years of wrestling.
Exactly, but you wouldn't realize that he was in there competing with 1 foot, so he was basically ahead of even a guy like Zach Gowen, who had only 1 leg and wrestled with a prosthetic.
Yep, it's fantastic. 19 years ago, at a SmackDown taping, Billy and Chuck defeated Rico and Rikishi in a tag team elimination match to win the WWE Tag Team Championship.
Yeah, these two, weird combination for them. Billy Gunn, definitely a tag team wrestler more so than a singles guy. And then they cut their hair, and they had that almost wedding that they were just like, oh no, we're not gay, but it was going to be like a gay wedding with the two of them, and then they got beat up by 3-minute warning. And Eric Bischoff on that one with the the mask was amazing that day. But yeah, thankfully they did not last too long, but a decent tag team together.
16 years ago, WWE re-signs Chris Masters. He would last 2 years before being let go a second time. 8 years ago, Spike TV announces via press release that they have signed former UFC light heavyweight champion Quentin Rampage Jackson to appear on both TNA and Bellator MMA programming. Jackson would only wrestle 1 match in TNA, and after seeing how TNA ran things, he has said he had no plans on a return.
And Rampage Jackson is also one-time B.A. Baracus in the A-Team movie that they put out about, what, good 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, that movie does not exist for me. Sorry.
I never watched it.
That's what a lot of people say. It's a happy 44th birthday to John Watson, best known to wrestling fans as Mikey Whipwreck. Watson started in ECW as part of the Ring Crew, trained by Cactus Jack, and would become an ECW Triple Crown champion. Another small guy who had an amusing run, who didn't have an offensive maneuver in the early part of his career. He even won the ECW TV championship against Pitbull without hitting 1 move of offense. Today would have been the... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just speaking of Mikey Whipwreck, he recently announced that he's not going to be doing any more autograph signings and stuff like that. He's, I guess, suffering a lot of migraine headaches and health issues right now. So hopefully he can get better. And even if he doesn't go back on the road or do comic conventions, hopefully just for his own health that he can get better.
Yep, that's what happens when you have years of getting hit in the face with stuff and being flung around like a rag doll. Anyways, moving on to Mr. Monsoon. Today would have been the 83rd birthday of Robert James Gino Morella, a.k.a. one of the all-time best commentators of all time, at least in my opinion, Gorilla Monsoon. Now, if you read up on Gorilla Monsoon, a lot of people didn't like him as a commentator, which, okay. But That's okay. Monsoon was a giant in high school, playing multiple sports and weighing over 300 pounds. However, his nickname given was Tiny, but of course. He would get his pro start wrestling for New York promoter Pedro Martinez, debuting as Italian-American babyface Gino Marella. He quickly became a heel as a man born on an isolated farm in Manchuria that spoke no English, ate raw meat, and drank the blood of his victims. Really? This is the same Monsoon? Yikes. He would have feuds with the likes of Bruno Sammartino for the WWF Championship. Over time, Monsoon would become 1/6 shareholder of the WWF and would become one of the WWF's top heels. He would feud with superstar Billy Graham, Killer Kowalski, Ernie Big Cat Ladd, and of course, Andre the Giant. He also airplane spinned and slammed Muhammad Ali in 1976 in Philadelphia. God, that must have been awesome. After retiring, Marella would sell his shares of the WWF to Vince Jr. and in return was given lifetime employment as part of honoring longtime friend of Vince Sr.'s. Monsoon would go on to have a long career as the main commentator for the first 6 WrestleManias and became a legend. On October 6, 1999, Marella died of heart failure brought on by complications of diabetes. He was 62. Both WWF and WCW both paid tribute to Monsoon following his passing. The staging area near the wrestler's entrance is known today as the Gorilla Position, where Monsoon was to be found during WWF events. Monsoon is a member of the WWE Hall of Fame, class of '94, a member of the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, class of 2010, and a member of the professional wing of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, class of 2011.
Yeah, just one of the greatest combos. Him and Jesse were really good together. People always loved the relationship that Gorilla had with Bobby the Brain Heenan. And I actually remember when Gorilla passed away, Bobby paying tribute to him on Nitro that following Monday night, and just really broken up over the loss of his friend. Gorilla was the one who tossed Bobby Heenan out of WWE and sent him packing on TV. And then, of course, it's unfortunate that also he survived his son, who passed away before he did, and that was referee Joey Marella, who was one of the top referees, especially in the mid to early 90s, mid 80s to early 90s, before dying in a car crash. So, yeah, family deep in the world of WWE.
All right, and with that said, we're going to move on now to June 5th, 41 years ago in Tokyo, Japan. Antonio Inoki defeated Stan Hansen via DQ in the final to win the MSG League for a 3rd straight year. This tournament is now known as the G1 Climax. 21 years. Sorry?
And look at that leap.
Oh, yeah, boot right in the melon. Kind of looks like Liu Kang during the whoa. 21 years ago on Nitro from Atlanta, Georgia, Eric Bischoff defeated Terry Funk to win the WCW Hardcore Championship. This would be Bischoff's only title win and would forfeit the title at the next Thunder. What's the point? Also on the show, Goldberg made his in-ring return to WCW with a quick victory over Tank Abbott after recovering from the limo arm smash incident that buggered his arm.
Dumbass.
God, I love watching that. 20 years ago at a SmackDown taping in North Dakota, Jeff Hardy defeated Jerry Lynn to win the WWF Light Heavyweight Championship. 17 years ago in Osaka, Japan, the world-class tag team of Gedo and Jado defeated American Dragon and Curryman, Bryan Danielson and Christopher Daniels to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship. 15 years ago, WWE announces they have acquired the World Class Championship Wrestling and Stampede Wrestling libraries, minus the Stampede matches featuring Bret Hart, which Hart owns the rights to. Hence, days after uploading the old new content, the WWE Network would pull the content in December 2015. I'm not sure if it's back up or I haven't actually looked.
I'm not totally sure what's going on with that. And then it kind of strange that everything from Stampede, except for Bret's matches, were sold to WWE. And then Bret has those, and they were trying to use them, I think, as part of that DVD that they made of Bret, where had he not actually agreed to do the DVD and come back to WWE and be a part of it properly, it was actually going to be a hatchet job like the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. And I think it was going to be like Bret Screwed Bret or something like that, the DVD was called. But he didn't want his legacy tarnished like how Warriors was, and that's why he agreed to come and do that DVD, which opened a lot of doors for reconciliation between the company. But yeah, just odd that they were able to acquire everything except for certain person's work. Like where else can you do that? Like imagine going to Major League Baseball and buying all the games to show except for Lou Gehrig. Oh, sorry, you can't do that. Oh, you want Nolan Ryan? Nope, sorry, Nolan has all those ones.
That's like buying one of those best ofs and the main song of that person is not on there. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So we'll move on to 13 years ago, WWE re-signs AC Connor, a.k.a. D'Lo Brown, a four-time WWE European champion and Intercontinental champ. He would wrestle primarily in dark matches during his brief comeback. He made just one TV appearance in his return, defeating Santino Marella on Raw. He would be released in 2009 due to budget cuts. I'm not sure if you say his name Aki or AC, or I'm not sure, maybe AC.
AC Connor, and
AC.
Yeah, I think you mentioned. I'm not sure. Looking at that, no, it's not here. But he actually did have, thankfully, an education outside of wrestling, where he was a certified accountant. So at least he has something to back up on. And he's currently doing commentary on Impact Wrestling with, I believe it's Matt Stryker and him doing that every Thursday on wherever you find Impact, whether it's Access in the States and Fight Network here in Canada.
You know, I've always been a fan of D'Lo Brown.
Oh, you better recognize.
It's a happy 37th birthday to Aussie-born Alexa Ryan, a.k.a. former two-time Shimmer champ, Madison Eagles. June 6th. Never heard of Madison Eagles, but hey. June 6th, 42 years ago in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon defeated Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens to win the AWA World Tag Team Championship.
Isn't that a handsome tag team right there?
Absolutely. I mean, Gagne looks like, you know, a stand-up businessman or, you know, grandfather or tycoon. And the other guy, he looks like he's going to kick you out of a bar in a minute.
Yep.
So June 6th, I already did that one. So 28 years ago on June 6th, in Albany, New York, Shawn Michaels defeated Marty Jannetty to win the WWF Intercontinental Championship. And Kevin Nash would make his WWF debut as Shawn Michaels' unnamed bodyguard. 24 years ago, ECW presented WrestlePalooza 97. Some of the matches on that card: Shane Douglas defeated Chris Chetty to retain the ECW World TV belt. Terry Funk defeated Chris Candido to retain the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Tommy Dreamer defeated Raven in a loser leaves town match. Raven would be on his way to WCW to form the Flock. And Taz defeated Shane Douglas via submission to win the ECW World Television Championship. 21 years ago, in a Thunder taping in Knoxville, Chavo Lieutenant Loco Guerrero defeated Daphne and Disco Inferno in a three-way match to win the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. 13 years ago, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was during the time with the Misfits in Action, and you had G.I. Bro and Major Guns, and what was it? Hugh Morris became General Huge Erection, and then there was Lash LaRue as Captain Cajun or something like that, and yeah, Chavo got to be the
I gotta say I wasn't a fan when both of them, whether it was WCW or WWF, had just so many damn factions. It was ridiculous.
I don't mind factions if they're used properly. But
some of them were fun, but all in all, there was just too many factions. As like what has wrestling turned into, like a gang sport now? It just
97 was basically gang warfare time for WWE, and that was a decent time, at least. And that's where people could break out and do everything. You had the Nation, who all could be Hall of Famers, just the Nation wasn't a Hall of Fame group. You know, it's weird how though. And I think Bruce Pritchard has mentioned sometimes you put together guys who aren't doing anything and make a faction of them, and you see who can rise to the top. And somebody always breaks out, and that's how you hide them for a little bit until they're ready. And look at what happened with Dwayne Johnson. He was die Rocky die and all this other stuff, and got injured, came back and joined the Nation and took over. And even eclipsed what the Nation could do.
So. Absolutely. 11 years ago, AAA presented Triple Mania 18 from Mexico City. Octagoncito defeated a bunch of minis in an TLC minis match to win the AAA minis championship. That'd be actually kind of fun to see. Los Menicos, consisting of Silver King and Ultimo Gladiator, defeated La Hermandad Extremia, which was Nico and Joe Linder. Beer Money, James Storm and Robert Roode, and Go Shuzaki, which was Atoshi Akoi, in a 4-team elimination match to win the AAA World Tag Team Championship. I love that poster, man. That's a great poster. Jack Evans defeated Nosawa, Christopher Daniels, and Extreme Tiger to win the AAA Cruiserweight Championship. Dr. Wagner Jr. defeated Electroshock to win the AAA World Heavyweight Championship. And La Parka defeated La Parka. Sorry, it should be L.A. Park defeated La Parka to keep the La Parka name.
Yeah, just to go back one, we were talking too much, and missed 13 years ago at Ring of Honor up for grabs in Hartford, Connecticut. The Age of the Fall, Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black, who we know as Seth Rollins, defeated Kevin Steen, a.k.a. Kevin Owens, and El Generico, which is Sami Zayn, in the finals of a one-night tournament to win the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship. Fans would litter the ring in protest over the win. Jimmy Jacobs had ended up working behind the scenes in WWE, got let go, and I believe he went over to Impact Wrestling and was wrestling again, but I think he's now working behind the scenes with them.
All right, thank you for that. Now I'm back on track. 10 years ago, Andy Levine is announced the winner of the Tough Enough reboot on Raw. Just 2 months after his win, he violates the WWE's wellness policy and is suspended for 30 days. He's released in April 2012, less than a year after his win. He would move out to on to competing for World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico. June 7th, 39 years ago in Greenville, South Carolina, Sergeant Slaughter defeated Wahoo McDaniel, who was injured and forfeited, to win the NWA United States Championship. 26 years ago in Jellicoe, Tennessee, the Thugs, Tony Anthony and Tracy Smothers, defeated the dynamic duo of Al Snow and Unabomb to win the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Championship. Did you know that this was the only tag team title belt change in Smoky Mountain that didn't involve the Rock and Roll Express nor the Heavenly Bodies? And who do you have on screen there? I know the one that's Kevin Sullivan. Who's the other guy there?
No, that is not Kevin Sullivan. On your left-hand side would be the late Tracy Smothers, who's part of the Thugs. And the other one on the right-hand side, which you thought was Kevin Sullivan, is actually Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony, who then, unfortunately, because of the connection that WWE had with Smoky Mountain and the stuff they did with Corny, bringing in Heavenly Bodies and Freddie Joe Floyd, which was also Tracy Smothers. This is Tony Anthony, and he became TL Hopper, the plumber.
That's it. All right, TL Hopper. I'm like, okay, who is he? Because I recognize the damn face.
Yep. He does have definitely a Kevin Sullivan look to him, but Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony became TL Hopper and ate a turd from a pool.
Excellent.
Fun. And use a plunger on people.
18 years ago, WWE presented Insurrection from England. Jazz defeated Trish Stratus to retain the WWE Women's Championship. Christian defeated Booker T to retain the WWE Intercontinental Championship. RVD and Kane defeated La Resistance, which was Sylviane Grenier and Rene Dupuis, to retain the World Tag Team Championship. And Triple H defeated Kevin Nash in a street fight to retain the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, this is probably available on the WWE Network, especially with the special ones that they did over in the UK and that.
Awesome. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever seen that one. 15 years ago, WWE presented WWE versus ECW head-to-head. This card was a soft launch of the reboot of ECW 5 days before One Night Stand. Just a few of the matches. Big Show lasted eliminated Randy Orton to win the WWE ECW Battle Royal. Edge defeated Tommy Dreamer in an Extreme Rules match, and John Cena defeated Sabu via DQ in a non-title match. 15 years ago, John Anthony Tenta Jr., a.k.a. Earthquake, died of a bladder cancer in Sanford, Florida. He was 42. Tenta was born on June 22nd, 1963 at 11 pounds, 3 ounces. Yikes. In Surrey, BC, in Canada, of course. At a young age, he began wrestling career in high school and became a Canadian junior champion in 1981. And he would finish 6th in the super heavyweight division at the World Junior Wrestling Championships in Vancouver, British Columbia. He would go on to Louisiana State University on an athletic scholarship in wrestling, but in 1985, LSU dropped wrestling, forcing Tenta to choose a new sport. He would play football and rugby. After university, he would move on to Japan to pursue a career in sumo wrestling. Even though he started late in sumo at age 22, most would start at age 15. This didn't prevent him from being a success. Named Koto Tenta, which means Tenta the Harp, he would win all 24 of his bouts and would later be named Koten Tenza, or Heavenly Mountain Harp. Of course, that makes sense. He would also be nicknamed the Canadian Comet by the Japanese press. I get Canadian Comet, all right. Tenta would walk away from a sumo career partly due to the difficult lifestyle of sumo, and because he had a tattoo that is often associated with gangsters in Japan, and public display is largely prohibited. He would then join Shohei Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling, debuting on May 1st, 1987 for about a year and a half, and would tour with Vancouver-based NWA All-Star Wrestling. His size obviously made him very attractive to American promoters, and he was snatched up by, of course, the WWF, and he would become one of the ultimate threats to Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania run.
Yeah, I still remember, obviously, when he got brought in. I think they were doing tapings in BC when they brought him in, and there was during the feud with Dino Bravo and the Ultimate Warrior, and doing push-ups and stuff like that. And they got a volunteer from the audience at random, but just happened to be on the hard camera side, halfway up the aisle, and right
on the end of the aisle.
Yeah. And just came in, and his name is John, and he sat on Dino's back, and Dino pressed him, and then he sat on Warrior's back, and that's when he squashed him, and they beat him up, and all of a sudden he became Canadian Earthquake, and he had the really bad shiny brown Shawn Michaels looking bad brown trunks, and finally went to blue. But yeah, and then he dropped the Canadian part of Earthquake. And of course, we got him squishing Damien the Snake and making snake burgers. You got him taking out Hogan on the Brother Love show, leading up to Hogan going away for a while to do a movie, which I think was Suburban Commando, coming back in time for SummerSlam 1990 and facing off against each other, and took quite the chair shots to the back. He had welts all over him from that match there, and then eventually Tugboat turned and went and joined him as Typhoon, and unfortunately was Golga. And then WCW Shark. I'm not a shark. I'm not a fish.
He's not a shark.
And it was Avalanche. And
honestly, I think he was one of the best bad guys for the WWF. It was a simple character, and the best is when he squished Hulk Hogan on the Brother Love show, and the whole thing they did with that. That was when, to me, SummerSlam was just as good as a WrestleMania.
Yeah, and then with also I'm going to WCW, that was basically a deal where Hogan was bringing in guys who he fought before in WWE. And it's been said, I think on 83 Weeks, that it wasn't necessarily so he'd get back wins like the people thought with the Warrior being brought in, but he trusted those people from his WWE times as opposed to new people in WCW. And he trusted Rick, obviously, and Rick helped him get in there, Rick Flair did. But, you know, all these other guys from Earthquake and obviously Beefcake and others that he feuded with, Randy, he brought in because he was comfortable with them. And it's unfortunate that after the whole time with Hogan and the Dungeon of Doom crap, they lost direction with Earthquake and what John and what to do with him. And they had him feuding with Bossman and losing part of his hair, feuding with Duggan, all things that he did before and just made no sense in WCW. So it's a shame. And of course, unfortunately, he got Golga because he had lost so much weight.
I think he's a guy that they should have stuck with the NWO, and he would just come to the ring and, you know, squish people on the outside, and that's all you had to do with him.
Yep.
Anyways, 12 years ago, WWE presented Extreme Rules. On this card, a lot of things happened. Kofi Kingston defeated MVP, William Regal, and Matt Hardy in a fatal four-way match to win the WWE United States Championship. Chris Jericho defeated Rey Mysterio in a no-holds-barred match to win the WWE IC belt. Tommy Dreamer defeated Christian and Jack Swagger in a triple threat match to win the ECW Championship. Santina Morella defeated Vicky Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero in a hog pen match to win the title of Miss WrestleMania. Batista defeated Randy Orton in a steel cage match to win the WWE Championship and become the first to win that belt in a steel cage, believe it or not. And correct me if that's wrong, but that's what I have read and kind of found out and looked up. Jeff Hardy defeated Edge in a ladder match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Post-match, CM Punk cashed in his Money in the Bank, and CM Punk defeated Jeff Hardy in just 61 seconds to win the World Heavyweight Championship. You take out the win by Santino there, which was just not a real title. It was just the title of Mr. WrestleMania. But my God, is this the most titles that have ever changed hands in a pay-per-view? Just like, wow, it's a big chunk of them.
Yeah, it's almost like just hitting a huge reset.
Like 5. There's 5 title changes right there.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
Makes me actually want to watch that one now. 11 years ago, WWE presented a viewer's choice edition of Raw. All of the matches on the show were determined by a live vote. Vladimir Kozlov defeated Santino Marella in a dance-off. Maurice won a Divas Battle Royal. Randy Orton defeated Edge via DQ. Edge had one arm tied behind his back for the match. And John Cena and CM Punk fought to a no contest. Near the conclusion of the match, NXT Season 1 winner Wade Barrett comes out. Pandemonium hit as the rest of the rookies from the first season of NXT would surround the ring, and John Cena would be torn apart. Anyone involved with WWE got their asses kicked. And Shawn, if you want to put a little more in on what kind of happened at the end of that broadcast.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see WWE for the first time really sending NXT rookies who became the Nexus with, you can see in this picture, having the armbands, but they sent them out there to basically be ring crew and take the ring apart before the fans had left for the night. They started taking the ropes off. They started taking up the rope that held down the canvas, peeled back the canvas and the padding, exposing the boards. And then, of course, Dana Bryan was choking out Justin Roberts with his own tie. And they just totally destroyed John Cena. I think they did hit CM Punk a bit, but Punk got out of there, and Cena was their target. And it should have made for a really hot summer and beyond. And we unfortunately know what happened with that and why Nexus kind of failed. I think I mentioned, on last week's episode, that Fred Rosser, who was can't think of his name at the moment. Darren Young, sorry. I had a brain fart for a second. Darren Young was just recently doing a interview for a documentary coming up on the network. Dana Bryan's contract just recently ended. Wade Barrett is back with WWE commentating for the proper NXT. Tarver, God only knows what happened with him. Justin Gabriel, I think, is on good talking terms with WWE. So he should be doing something with that documentary as well. I believe Heath Slater, or Heath Miller as his name, is over in Impact Wrestling, but I think he's injured. And of course, we have Skip Sheffield, who was Ryback, who nobody wants around, and he keeps on putting up polls on his social medias, such as Twitter, for definitely wondering where he should go next, and putting WWE, AEW, NXT, or retire. And most of the people are voting retire. He's saying, whoa, that's a fake vote, and I've been hacked. So I think people just want him to retire, but go figure.
Yeah, it's too bad because he was getting cheered and everything, and then everything fell apart for him.
Yep.
Moving on, it's a happy 32nd birthday to Tyler Conrad Mellon, aka Tyler Hendricks. Tyler would have a brief run in 2012 and 2013. Had to appear. I'm trying to. Oh, that didn't look good at all. Had two appearances in 2014 as one of the Adam Rosebuds, and had some ROH appearances. She also was 3-time OVW Women's Champion. It would have been a happy birthday, 71st birthday to legendary ring announcer Howard Finkle, and it's too bad that he is gone. And at least he did live the 71. That still though is young for, especially how small he was when he was more in his prime, and then he ballooned pretty big there. But yeah. he is actually a hoot. And if you have yet to have watched the Legends House, it's worth watching for these guys, especially Jim Duggan and Roddy Piper are just hilarious in it. Going on to June 8th, 33 years ago in Japan, the Glamour Girls, Leilani Kai and Judy Martin, defeated the Jumping Bomb Angels, Norori Tenu and Azumi Yakumazaki, to win the WWF Women's Tag Team Championship. Some neat facts here. The titles changed hands due to a countout, as is standard in Japan, and the Glamour Girls are the only two-time WWF Tag Women's Champions. Plus, neither team was contractually obligated to the WWF at the time. The girls would hold the titles until it was retired on February 14th, 1989.
I think they had less competition for those titles than they do right now. Like, I think even today, after all the different releases over the last little bit, they have just 3 teams actually viable for the current titles, but they did have more recently with the Riot Squad and the Iconics and stuff like that. But during that incarnation of the titles, I don't know who else was vying for them other than the Glamour Girls and Jumping Bomb Angels.
Yeah, you didn't see the titles on TV very often. They might have used them more on the road, but then again, you got to get at least 2 somewhat women names and then find 2 other women to go against them. But I honestly don't recall seeing many women's matches when I went seeing them live, except for seeing Bull Nakano and of course London Blaze, until wrestling got more into the late 90s and early 2000s. You just didn't see a lot of women's wrestling.
Well, that was, well, even with the Lunder and Bull, that was early to mid 90s there. These titles were retired by 89. I recall seeing them on, what was it, the very first Royal Rumble from Hamilton. That was they were defended between the 2 teams, shocking. And of course, at the first Survivor Series, where they had the heavyweight men's division, the Intercontinental men's division, the tag team, and then 10 women, which included the Bomb Angels and Glamour Girls on either side. So they had a women's one. But that first Survivor Series in '87 only had 4 matches on it.
Yeah. 33 years ago, NWA presented Clash of the Champions 2, Miami Mayhem. Look at those graphics. Yes. Barry Windham defeated Brad Armstrong to retain the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. The Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, defeated the Sheepherders, Luke and Butch, to retain the NWA United States Tag Team Championship. And Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard versus Dusty Rhodes and Sting for the NWA World Tag Team Championship ended in a double DQ. 31 years ago, at an All Japan Wrestling TV taping in Tokyo, Japan, Mitsuhara Misawa defeated Jumbo Tsuruta in a stunning upset victory. The original booking had Jumbo winning, but with the fans buying up his merchandise and chanting his name before the show began, the call was made. That call was made by big man Giant Baba. 24 years ago, WWF presented King of the Ring. In this one, Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Arn Johnson in the King of the Ring semifinal match. Mankind defeated Jerry Lawler in a King of the Ring semifinal match. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Mankind to win the 1997 King of the Ring tournament. And The Undertaker defeated Farouk to retain the WWF Championship. Is there anything I'm missing in that one?
No, that seemed like a decent one. I think actually that one also had Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin.
Probably did. I probably just took it up for time.
They were tag team champions at the time, and they ended up facing each other. And this was before their WrestleMania matchup that they'd end up having. But they were tag team champions who had to go against each other. This was also the start of Mankind becoming a fan favorite because they were just talking about Mrs. Foley's baby boy and the interviews with Jim Ross and showing the Dude Love stuff. And so they were getting close to the birth of Dude Love. Unfortunately, Triple H won the King of the Ring, which was supposed to be the year before, but the curtain call halted that one. But he worked his way back up over the year and proved himself to get the King of the Ring nod the following year. But the prop that they gave him with that crown, oh my God, just I didn't find the photo, and probably Triple H would be happy that I didn't. But it was just a really bad looking crown that he destroyed numerous times trying to not have to wear that thing. And they kept on just producing him another one until they finally got the hint and stopped doing it. But yeah, that was leading up to SummerSlam, the blue cage and Mick Foley ripping off his Mankind shirt to show the heart of Dude Love. But this was a huge brawl that happened here. And even actually in between, now that I think of it, in between was I think the Calgary Stampede in your house, where they ended up brawling all the way around the Saddle Dome as well. So it was a big opportunity for Mankind or Mick Foley and Triple H to prove themselves and eventually get into the higher echelon. But they were right there between the mid card and getting themselves into the main event status.
Cool. And thank you for that story. We're going on to 22 years ago at a Raw is War number 316. Ivory defeated Deborah to win the WWF Women's Championship, and Stone Cold was the CEO of the day. 22 years ago at a WCW Thunder from Syracuse, New York, Perry Saturn and Chris Benoit defeat Diamond Dallas Page and Kanyon to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. 17 years ago at a WWE event in Germany, John Layfield is fired from CNBC. Awesome, you got the picture. The reason JBL, the wrestler, did the goose step and gave the Nazi salute several times. Luckily for John Layfield, he didn't get charged for this illegal action in Germany because the Germans, unlike CNBC, knows it was a wrestling character that did it and not the actual real man. And despite the public relations nightmare that JBL caused, he still would win the WWE Championship 3 weeks later. 13 years ago, TNA presented Slammiversay. Awesome Kong defeated both Serena Deb and Josie Robinson in 2 separate $25,000 challenge matches. Samoa Joe defeated Booker T, Christian Cage, Rhino, and Robert Roode in a King of the Ring. In a King of the Mountain match to retain TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Kevin Nash was the special enforcer. After the show, a construction worker fell to his death when a scaffold he was on broke and collapsed. Falling 20 feet to the floor, another man was injured in the incident. Kind of a sucky way to end the show.
Oh, yeah.
7 years ago in Tokyo, Japan, Ricochet defeated Kushida to win the 2014 New Japan Pro Wrestling Best of the Super Junos 21 tournament and earned an IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship match at Dominion. And it's a happy 63rd birthday to Daniel Dwayne Severin, a.k.a. Dane to be Severin. Severin's looking good in that picture. Severin is considered one of the most decorated grapplers of all time. He was an alternate for the 1980 and 84 and 1988 Summer Olympic teams in wrestling. He won 13 AAU national championships from 82 to 94. He is also a member of the Arizona State University Hall of Fame, a Triple Crown UFC champion, a Hall of Famer, and a two-time NWA champion. I particularly was not a fan of his wrestling style, but my God, he certainly did a lot in the sports industry.
Yeah, it's like watching paint dry.
All right. 30 years ago, on June 9th, the Universal Wrestling presented UWF Beach Brawl from Palomento, Florida. Only 550 fans were in attendance, with about 18,000 homes watching on pay-per-view. Some names on the card in this 91 card was Boris Zukov, Firecat, Terry Gordy, Brian Blair, and Jim Brunzell, Orndorff, Colonel De Beers, Bob Orton, Cactus Jack, and more. Rockin' Robin defeated Candy Devine to win the UWF Women's Championship, and Steve Williams defeated Bam Bam Bigelow to win the UWF Sports Channel Television Championship. And sounded like a good card. Too bad they didn't get a lot of people.
Yeah, that title is the one that Herb Abrams is holding right there. This was actually a train wreck of a show. You can find it on YouTube. Ooh. If you want to have mindless stupidity with 7 fans watching. And, of course, if you happen to watch Dark Side of the Ring Season 2, there is a episode with Herb Abrams and talking about this and everything. The man was just really messed up. Way too much money and fame somehow got to his head. Bought blazing yellow cowboy boots, had hookers, and a lot of blow going on. And that was his downfall. Cocaine and hookers and yellow boots. Check out
back then I wasn't into blow. I was into glow.
Very much.
30 years ago in Mexico City, Mexico, Conan El Barbero defeated Cien Caras in the finals of a tournament to become the first CMLL World Heavyweight Champion. And that is Sin Caras.
Uh-oh. I've lost Chris for the moment. I'm not sure what's going on, but yeah, Conan, great grappler. He was also just recently at AEW Double or Nothing, and yeah, it was hard to find a picture of
Jay Strongbow. 26 years ago in... Sorry?
I think we might have talked over each other. Do you want to go with the Hall of Fame again?
Oh, sure. The Hall of Fame. We'll go back there. 27 years ago, WWF holds its first ever Hall of Fame induction ceremony from Baltimore, Maryland. This would be the first year a full class was inducted, as the year before it was just Andre the Giant. Inductees included Freddie Blassie, Bobo Brazil, James Dudley, Gorilla Monsoon, Arnold Scotland, Buddy Rogers, and Chief Jay Strongbow. And I don't believe that was a Dudley brother. No. 26 years ago in Tokyo, Japan, the Holy Demon Army, Tohaki Kawada and Akira Tao, defeated Kenta Kobayashi and Mitsuhiro Misawa to win the All Japan Pro Wrestling Unified World Tag Team Championship. I'm getting better at those names. 23 years ago on Nitro from Boston, Jeff Jarrett defeated Dean Malenko to win the WCW United States Championship. And the Stinger would repel from the rafters to save a beaten down DDP. 21 years ago, the Holy Demon Army had another big win, defeated Teiko Omari and Yokiyashi Takayama in a tournament final to win the All Japan Pro Wrestling Unified World Tag Team Championship. This would be the Holy Demon Army's 6th and final Tag Team Championship. It wouldn't last long, though, as Akira Tao and about a dozen wrestlers walked out of the company in protest of its ousted president, Mrs. Shirahara Misawa. Yikes. Misawa would go on to form Pro Wrestling Noah. 17 years ago at an NWA TNA weekly pay-per-view taping, AJ Styles defeated Kazarian to win the TNA X Division Championship. And 12 years ago, Batista vacates the WWE Championship after it's revealed he suffered a torn left bicep in the steel cage match against Randy Orton 2 days earlier. Today would have been the 97th birthday of James E. Barnett, a.k.a. Jim Barnett. Barnett, who initially was a pro wrestler turned promoter, was the guy who came up with the idea of setting up a wrestling ring in a TV studio and doing live matches instead of highlights from an arena show. This would change the landscape of how wrestling programming would be presented for years to come. In '83, Barnett would serve as a senior vice president for the WWF and had a hand in the first 3 WrestleMania shows. He would go on to Jim Cornette Promotions and stay with them until WCW's shutdown. He was 80 years old when he passed. Barnett, an openly gay promoter, is a member of the inaugural class of Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1996.
Yeah, JR has a lot of stories involving Mr. Barnett, and even does a lovely impersonation of Mr. Barnett.
Ah, cool. June 10th. He didn't do any of those stories when we were seeing him, did he?
There might have been a Jim Barnett in there.
Yeah.
My boy.
Going on to June 10th, 38 years ago in St. Louis, Missouri, Harley Race defeated Ric Flair 2-1 in a best-of-3 falls match to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. This would end Race's 631-day run as champion. 26 years ago, Triple A presented Triple Mania 3A Part 1. From Mexico, Super Calo pinned Angel Mortal in a mask versus mask match. Parasito Rojo was the last man in the cage in a minis cage match. The last man in the cage was forced to unmask a Mr. Payato Sato Roko. Joe is the one that had to unmask. 25 years ago on Nitro, Kevin Nash makes his return to WCW as Scott Hall's big surprise. And Nash wasn't there to play. This would be the last time Raw beat Nitro in the ratings until April of '98. 19 years ago, Stone Cold Steve Austin walks out on WWE just hours before Raw. This would be the second time Austin would walk out that year. Austin was not happy with the storyline and didn't want to lose his equity to increase ratings. He was scheduled to start a feud with Brock Lesnar. Austin wouldn't return to Raw until the next February. For this episode of Raw, the focus would be moved to Ric Flair and McMahon's feud. Vince McMahon defeated Ric Flair in a no-holds-barred match to become the 100% owner of the WWE.
Yeah, this was the time when Austin took his ball and went home, and he, I guess, says it wasn't anything personal against Brock Lesnar, but Brock wasn't there long enough for him to just be put over that quickly in a non-hyped up matchup. And this was just a King of the Ring qualifier. It was going to get squished. He would have gladly put over Brock had they had time to build up to it and advertise it more than just oh, by the way, next week this is happening. And they tried changing it, didn't like it. He then went home and wasn't seen for a while. They did a hatchet job on him with the Raw magazine and also the very brief run that WWE Confidential had on Spike TV at the time, talking about taking his ball and going home. Eventually, JR was able to get him and Vince together and iron things out for him to return. But, yep, it was a difficult year for Steve at that time. A lot of pain going on with injuries and creative not going his way.
Yep, but of course, we all forgive Steve Austin.
Yes.
9 years ago, TNA presented Slammiversay from Texas. Former WWE and NWA champion Christian Cage would make a cameo appearance. Brooke Tashmaker defeated Gail Kim to win the TNA Knockouts Championship. AJ Styles and Kurt Angle defeated Christopher Daniels and Kazarian to win the TNA World Tag Team Championship. And to finish everything off, Bobby Roode defeated Sting to retain the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And that is it for this week in wrestling history. Of course, it's compiled from the vast land of Google, Wikipedia, CageSideSeats.com, and most importantly, from fans like you and journalists that had front row seats to history. And a big thank you to, of course, our sponsor Coolbet, Coolbet.com, and sportsbook betting and casino games.
Excellent. Yeah. So stay cool and bet responsibly. Go check out Coolbet, and they can help you get into the game. Now, we also want to remind you that ProWrestlingTees.com has our T-shirts. You can get any of the 4 designs there, but always you can get a Ontario comic book version, and that will always support Steven's Wrestling Journey, where Steven Spice was our guest a couple of weeks ago on a podcast, and he's still doing research with Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto for Chiari malformation. Nobody else is studying it here in Canada, and this is the best way he can give back. If you've ever been at an indie show and met Steven or seen him, you know he knows his stuff and can lip back with the best of them. He's a really great kid, and all the money raised from those sales of those shirts are going to there. We've already donated $500 with sales of t-shirts and posters, and we hope to go a little bit more hardcore on selling, especially when things start getting back to normal with shows, live events. So yeah, get out there and support Steven's Wrestling Journey. Steven's Hearts for Chiari is also the hashtag and what they have right now going on at Sick Kids. So thank you, Chris, for being a part of this, and we will see you later on with the regular podcast where we're going to look at the weekend news and get ready for In Your House Takeover NXT. Reverse all those names as NXT Takeover In Your House.
Yes.
So thank you again, and we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely.